Now, being from the Midwest, I was surprised to find that there were Union units that came from North Carolina. And so I had to delve into that subject. And first, Abraham Lincoln was elected president in November of 1860. And basically back at that time in the 1800s, he would not take office until March. And that did not change in this country until FDR in the 1930s. While the Buchanan administration was a lame duck, they did nothing. And 7 southern states seceded from the Union. And basically, North Carolina put together, the legislature decided to have a vote on whether they should have a secession Congress. And that took place at the end of February 1861. And as you can see, the vote was very close, but they didn't want a secession Congress. They wanted to stay in the Union at that point. What pushed things over the edge was the attack on the fort in Charleston, Fort Sumter. And after that point, Lincoln felt he had to ask for 90,000 men to join in the United States Army to put down a rebellion. And after that point, then there were 4 additional states that seceded and decided to join and be in the Confederacy. And one of those states was North Carolina. Another one was Virginia, and Tennessee, and Arkansas. And so at that point, what will happen is North Carolina will muster about 200,000 men, just under that, into service. And they are, of the 11 states that secede, they are 4th in the number of individuals that joined the Army. Now, no Union forces were brought together at the outset of this war, so how do we end up with units in the Union? Well, it starts early enough. It starts with the invasion of Hatteras Island. There are 2 forts that are hardly held by anybody, and they really don't have many troops there. And they are overtaken by a expedition that was really sort of a great success for the Union. The Union at the beginning did not have great successes in the field, but here General Benjamin Butler and Captain Silas Stringham cooperated in a joint Army-Navy adventure and took control of Hatteras Island. And then in the next year, in 1862, Union forces went into the intercoastal waters and took possession of some major areas of Tidewater, North Carolina. And so what happens is that General Burnside will call for local troops to be created in North Carolina. And so the first North Carolina infantry is authorized, and in May, which is still when major fighting is going on to complete takeover of some of the coastal areas is going on, and they have a major group of enlistments take place, and they form the first North Carolina. And the first North Carolina never actually takes the field as a regiment, but they use the individuals in the various companies for good purposes of keeping in touch with the local people and serving as good sources of information. So they are pickets and guards. They work supplies. There are some spies that are taken. Basically, they have some people come in and say, well, just go back to your community and report to us, so that they had a beat on what was going on in the area. They were recon scouts, they were police, protecting those Union people that had businesses, protect their businesses from any harm, and they were working parties. And in October '63, the second Infantry Division was created, and then basically by that time of the war, we're talking about it. You know, Civil War is into now like its third year already. It's hard to get people to volunteer, so they created this unit, but it doesn't really take off. But they do get some additional recruits, and they also, because of what's going on in North Carolina, they get some Confederate soldiers who are disillusioned with the Confederacy, and they come into the lines and want to participate. And what will happen is in 1865, they decide to merge the two units. So when I went into the records to look at the individual records for these soldiers, I found a lot of people, a good number of the soldiers that had been in there since 1862 were the second unit. And it makes sense in some ways, because then you want to have some people that are veterans in with the new recruits. And so the first and second, basically, because they've combined it, you really just can't talk about the first and the second and try to say, well, this person was over in the first and the second. Now, where did these soldiers come from? Well, they come from the coastal areas in North Carolina. And so they're all, basically a lot of the counties are identified there that are in the coastal area. I put the Hatteras Banks in there because that's not really a county, but there were an awful lot of volunteers that came that they said they were from Hatteras Banks. So you can tell that they're basically from the Outer Banks area. Also were some Virginians, and there were some other states represented here, and from England and France had a recruit or two. And what you need to know is about the structure of the first and second. What the high officers in there come from the north. There's positions as first lieutenant and second lieutenant that are basically given to northern soldiers that could have been a corporal, a sergeant, a corporal or sergeant, or a first lieutenant, or second lieutenant, the lower rank, in other divisions of the Northern Army, and they were looking to become officers. And so they took that over. And then there are a number of people that are North Carolinian that take a second lieutenant position or a first lieutenant position. But the main bulk of the privates and the sergeants are from North Carolina. Now, so basically the two units together have over 1,800 men that are in service. Now, deaths, I put it into three categories. First one is military deaths. I can identify that they died because of military reasons. The contagious diseases will have an effect, and so that's the second category I have. The third category, disease, is basically a catch-all. I mean, so the largest two groups is we either have no information on why they died, or we basically say they died from disease. And then a minor one, much smaller group of deaths have been identified as lung disease or heart disease. Several, and so those are very small. The only one that's major below those first two categories is if they have diarrhea. And so there's a lot of deaths with diarrhea, and then that happens from camp life. That they're getting diseases. They're getting something that they shouldn't. So that's the. Let's see. So in this group, there's 84 deserters. Some people are always going to desert, but they are also paid bounties. And so 83% of these soldiers will receive a bounty from the government and basically the bounties are mostly $100, and there are some that are $300 and $500, and I have no information on what made the differences. There are no bounties for the officers. They're being paid better because they're officers. So they're not included in this group. This is just rank and file. Over 1,500 get bonuses, mostly of $100. And they could have requested to have all or part of that at the time they enlisted. And if they didn't take anything, they got the $100 at the end of their service. And then there are some people that took $25 and get $75. So that's something that happens in this organization. Now, the second regiment, and I'll talk about the third in a minute, these are called the mounted infantry. And where do they appear? Well, Tennessee, before I get to that point, I just killed the screen there. There we go. Before I get to that point, Tennessee, because the war went badly in Tennessee. And so in 62, Tennessee has Memphis, and it has Chattanooga, and Murfreesboro. There are Confederate troops in those areas, but most of the state, because Nashville has been taken, the Union sits well. And so what happens is in Knoxville, that's a major fortress in Tennessee, and Tennessee has a lot of soldiers serving in the Union. And so there's a number of infantry, cavalry, mounted infantry that are Tennessee troops. And so at this juncture in the war, they decide that they want to have North Carolina troops. And so they'll be based out of Knoxville. And with that, they will, the soldiers will be, in this case, could be a number of Tennesseans take some of the officer positions, and to move up to commissions. And it would be a mixture of people from North Carolina and Tennessee that are the main troops. Now, how do we know what they, where those individuals are from? Well, when they enlist, they give their age, they give where were they born, and so what we find out is that there's a lot of people that are born in North Carolina that are in these units, as well as Tennesseans and a few others. But it's basically because they've identified their birthplace. And, so maybe their family moved on into Tennessee. We don't know for sure. So we really can't, we really have to go really into the weeds to find that information out. But the second North Carolina is created in October of '63. They get into service. They're sent to Greenville, Tennessee, which is west of Knoxville, and they serve there. Then they move up and east into Bull's Gap and serve there in November of '63. And then they go west into the Clinch River area, and they serve there, and that's west of Knoxville. And then they go to Mississippi, and they're scouting there in Mississippi. And then they end up in April in the Cumberland Gap doing patrols, sending out mounted patrols in the mountains around East Tennessee. Now, the 3rd Regiment is created in June of '64 at Knoxville, and they will go into North Carolina, into Tennessee, and then into North Carolina in June and July on a raid. And they go to Camp Vance, which is a training center for new recruits of the Confederacy that's located near Morgantown. And they attack that camp. They get 250 soldiers as prisoners from that raid, and they get at least 48 horses, because we know when they came back to Knoxville, they only had 132 prisoners, and they had 48 horses. I think they took in more horses, but lost them on the way, and of course had, trying to take that many prisoners back, and you just don't have the full soldiers to complement to keep people from, just disappearing during the ride back. And from there, after that, they go to Tennessee again, to Bull's Gap, and then they're in the Cherokee Forest area, and then on to Painted Rock. They do another raid into that area in December of '64. Now, in '65, they're pretty much doing the same things, but they're not, basically, they're still separate units. And as such, the 2nd Mounted is, and what's happening is, this is with the Stoneman raid coming into North Carolina and heading north to Virginia. And basically, so these two units are helping protect them as they move through the mountains along East Tennessee, and then will also perform duties in North Carolina during that period of time. And so in August 8th, the 2nd Mounted will be mustered out, and the 3rd Mounted will be mustered out August 16, 1865. Now, so first I wanted to show you, so here's where these soldiers come from. A good number of them come from Tennessee, and the counties that are basically in the eastern part of the state. There's some from Virginia counties that are also from the mountain areas of Virginia. And then there are a few soldiers that come from South Carolina counties that join, and then even they pick up several Georgians. They even have a Floridian and a Kentuckian, and some man from Ireland, and a man from Germany that have joined their group. So it's a diverse group. But they're basically, pretty much all these soldiers are farmers. They are listed as farmers. There's very few other professions that are showing in there, but basically farmers that are joining up. And here, the recruits from North Carolina, in North Carolina, are in the western area. Buncombe is that has a lot of soldiers, and there are some soldiers from this area, the Davidson County, Forsyth, and Guilford. And so, but these are basically western counties, and include this area. Now, in these two groups, the second and third, that's over 1,700, almost 1,800 soldiers come in. There are 24 deaths in the military, 16 from contagious causes, and the rest from various diseases. That's about 9% of the number, and then deserters are a little higher, about 8%. And the bounties, over 62% of the soldiers, over 1,100 soldiers received bounties of $100 here, and the second and third infantry, mounted infantry.